The video you are about to see follows one school's journey over the course of 3 years as they engaged in an intensive systems change process with support from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network, or PATN, and Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Professional Development Consultants. The project, which was entitled Membership, Participation, and Learning, had the goal of helping school teams develop the structures, knowledge, and skills needed to provide students who have complex instructional needs with access to the general education curriculum in the general education classroom setting. This documentary is intended to help schools and educational leaders that are interested in embarking on this type of systems change to understand the value this work holds for students, educators, families, and the community, as well as the level of effort needed to effect true and sustained change.
We found out in, I guess, June, before we left school last year, that we would have students in our classroom this year that had complex support needs. And it did cause some anxiety because we've always had students with IEPs, different levels, varying levels, but never children that had complex support needs. So with us not having that experience and not having any background to deal with those kinds of needs for a child, we thought, okay, well, first we have to think about the needs, but academics, so there was there was an apprehension and some anxiety about what we were going to have to do.
Yeah, there was. My experience was always with learning support students who had the ability to at least recognize words and be able to read, and now I have students that I'm working on letter sounds with, and that's a big, big change for us.
Because sometimes those symbols are symbols that you wouldn't see anywhere, but because we're focused on it, then that's what we're going to be practicing today, okay? Especially with our grade level. I mean, with 5th grade, the experience have been, like Jenny said, we've always had students who were not on grade level and sometimes 3-4 years behind, but now not only is there a gap in the ability level, but some of the very basic foundational skills are not there. And that's not something that we had a huge amount of experience teaching because, like she said, most of the kids could recognize letters, recognize words, maybe have trouble putting multisyllabic words together, but we're now looking at recognizing letters.
Let's go over. Find the second word that has a double L.
Which one's double? This one or this one?
Yeah. Yes, there is.
What?
This one.
Which one? Right or left?
The basket.
There's 2 L's here? 1, 2?
Yes.
Or is there 2 L's here?
Which word do you see that has 2 L's?
Right or left? Which one has 2 L's? Which hand?
To the right.
The right, good. And fellow has 2 L's in it. Okay, good job.
Our Director of Pupil Services invited me to be part of a district-wide team that was looking at, we were doing some improvement planning and some planning for our special ed LRE numbers. And while I was there, I met a team from Patan.
We decided to increase the amount of time that students with complex support needs spend in the regular education classroom. It's a 3-year project, and each year kind of increasing that to find ways to meet their needs in that classroom.
I went back to Barth and I thought about who could make this work, who from our elementary school here should be on that team that are risk takers.
We had a lot of apprehension. We were given a call, do you want to be on this team? We're going to try inclusion. We already were doing inclusion, at least we thought we were, and Mr. Gearing came on and said, I need a representative for regular education, special education, so I took on the initiative as a regular education teacher to partner up.
And Mr. Gearing was like, Quigley, you're on this committee, you're doing this. We were scared. Basically, that was what we were scared. We didn't know what it was going to look like. So a lot of fear was put into place, but basically we were given the shove and we have to do this. It's going to be great. So it was kind of just jump right in and see how things are going to go.
We've gone down to Patan several times. We've had some workshops here at our school, and before I knew it, we were waist deep in MPL planning and processing and doing all those good things. It moved quickly.
Coming into the process, I was nervous of the gap. I think for students who are in first grade or kindergarten going through the MPL process, they have the curriculum isn't as far away from where they are. Where in fourth grade, I personally feel the gap is huge. So I was afraid of how am I going to get them to learn some of this curriculum.
Initially, I thought the biggest obstacle was going to be teachers who were anxious or worried about having students with complex support needs in their classroom. How do I teach this child? Do I have the materials for such a diverse range of learners in my classroom, from the high to the low, and all of our students in between? So my biggest concern was picking specific teachers and classrooms where we could get some momentum and make things work initially, because success breeds upon success.
One thing our principal said to us when we first started this whole process, when we asked why are we going to do this, was why not? So that was kind of our motto for the whole first year, was why not? Every question that we asked when we said why this, why push in, why go into science, was why not? And it was just perfect. We just stopped talking when he would say that, because it's true. That's what you would want for your own child, is to everything possible to be given to them and accepted of them. So why not?
One of the structural changes that we've done that's really helped the process is the elimination of a separate classroom as their homeroom. And that's done a couple things for us. One, it has on the computer increase the amount of students that are actually in that room. And we should get credit for all of the students that are in that room. So as new students register, they know downtown that we really have 26 children that are educated in this classroom, not 22 and 4 mystery children showing up for most of the day, which is where we got to. And we were still receiving new enrollees because it looked like our numbers were lower. So initially, that really helped slow down the class size by actually including the children that were included in our numbers. Another structural change that's been really important is the creation of actual time in your schedule for the IEP teacher and the general ed teacher to co-plan.
I think it's changed, the process that we went through to develop our instruction and our assessments and things to make sure that we were hitting all the needs. I really think that it made me, just on a daily basis, look at things that I kind of took for granted before. I took it for granted that, well, this is what we do and this is how we do it, and you sometimes just do it because you've been doing it for a while and it just kind of comes that way naturally. But it really does make you stop and look at everything. It was good. It made me change what I do.
My role as an IU consultant is to partner with Patton and begin to build relationships, trust, respect, and just get to know the teams. Each team is different, and the nuances of the school, the structures is going to be different. So we spend a lot of time at the very beginning just building those relationships.
Prior to participating in this project, my classroom, my students would have come into my class off the bus in the morning and pretty much stayed in my room all day, except for inclusive lunch and some specials that they would participate in, and also recess. And other than that, I would be their main teacher for the day, and we would do functional academic activities throughout the day. When we create the near and far links, is it a stepwise process, like far, 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 near? Or can it be like that, or should we always be striving for that near?
You should always be striving for that near. Our support with teams changes over time. It may be more intense at the beginning, where we're doing a lot of professional development, and then it sort of morphs into more individualized team support. It's ongoing and it's ever-changing.
We had some trainings at Patan. We've had some support here through the MPL process at Barth Elementary School. Full days of intense work, looking at schedules, looking at specific students, looking at specific IEPs on how to make accommodations and modifications for that. And initially, it was slow going. Then around January, it really picked up the pace. We were ready to go.
As the supervisor of special education, one of the many ways I've tried to support the team over here is being a member of the team. So during trainings, going to Patan, providing input on things, being available for questions, sitting down and talking to the team members for positives and ways we can work with different students, how we can get them included, and how we can increase that inclusion, that time of inclusion in the regular education setting.
Well, the first step to help teams move forward is to really know where they are, to know where to start. So if it's resource structures, then that's where we'll start. If it's building philosophical mindset for inclusive education, then that's where we'll start. So it is really critical to complete the needs assessment and to take a look at that to see exactly where teams need that support.
For me, I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to help the teachers because it almost sounded like it was more in-class based. And there were times when I would be pulling out my kids because we can't always treat inside the classroom, depending on our goals. But that's not necessarily true. We also, as occupational therapists, I think, have to look at another side and another vision of treating in the school district. It's not always a pull-out. We can get a lot done in an inclusion process and a push-in into the class. And not only for our students, but for the whole class.
What we found here at Barth is that after we did the initial training, we really needed to do some ongoing team instructional planning support. So that was 2 specific grade levels, and that helped them move forward and gave them the how.
Actually, before I put together our MPL team, our school-based team, I talked to the entire staff about what the vision was for this, what our goal was, and how we might go making that work. I made some decisions on who was going to be a good person to get in on year 1, who might be somebody who might benefit from hearing more about it and seeing some success in the school. So initially in September, I started out in a faculty meeting. I talked about what inclusion means to me and why it's a good thing. I talked about a lot of success that we've had with inclusion at Barth. We have a great deal of success with our learning support population, our high incidence students. That subgroup of students is the reason we've been so successful in our PSSAs. When we stopped pulling them out of the 90-minute core block, the results were through the roof. They scored well on their foresights. They had access to the curriculum that prepares students to do well on tests like the PSSAs. We have examples like in 4th grade, all of our IEP students scored advanced or proficient on our 4th grade PSSAs, and that was never the case. And if one thing you can take from that is that students cannot do well on material that they've never been exposed to. So we instantly saw that success, that co-teaching model in our high incidence students. So here at Barth, we have also our students with complex support needs. Why can't we see that same success with our students with complex needs?
I feel bad to admit that I really did not believe that children with disabilities belonged in a regular classroom. I really felt that it would interfere with the regular education students' education and wasn't sure if there was a benefit for those children with learning disabilities. I, since then, have really changed my view. I think when we had an in-service and they felt that we should look at the student first and not the disability, it really made me think about my previous view. And now I believe it is definitely a benefit to all the students in the classroom.
I saw some teachers who were hesitant. I don't want that child in my room. I don't want a child with complex disabilities in my room. I don't know how to teach them. You got a degree in education. You know how to teach them. It's just, you're afraid. Take the step, take the challenge, and step up to the plate, and you can do it.
As you started to settle in a little bit and gain a little more knowledge, I think it became much easier. It's still difficult, but it became a little bit easier. And the collaboration, because you're forced to a certain degree to work as a team and to keep all the team together.
Good teachers who wanted to do the right thing, who aren't trying to get out of work, didn't know specifically how instruction would look with children with complex needs in their classroom. So one of the challenges is meeting all of the different professional development needs, because all of the teachers are at a different level of what that might look like.
We were already including students for so many things that other schools weren't, that it's just a different culture here. So I think my view at first was that, what are you guys, crazy? This is never going to work. And I thought what we were doing was enough. And what I've seen is that it wasn't enough.
They like to see success in somebody else's classroom, and we've done that this year. We picked some teachers that made it successful, not at perfect levels, but that it looked like a classroom that you would have any year with children that you would have in it any year, and the reservations have really dissipated from the staff. I can do that. Look how successful that was.
Some of the obstacles were time and materials, and we're going to have that the rest of our lives as teachers, so we're making do.
Some of the things that I've put into place to make sure that it continues on the present successful track is scheduling that co-planning time with teachers for next year, putting all of our students with complex support needs directly into homerooms. We've really eliminated what we used to call life skills classrooms and created just IEP teachers who support all students with IEPs in a grade level.
Moving forward with this project, we have decided as a team to have our special education teachers each responsible for a grade level, which will include our learning support and our life skills students, all for that grade level with that one special education teacher and the general education teacher.
What does the child need to succeed? Well, Bob, they need a communication device, they need some extra this, they need a bigger table, they need preferential seating, they might need a one-on-one assistant, though not always. We have a lot of needs here, Bob. We can do all of that inside the general education classroom.
We worked a lot with the staff from the IU and Patton, and we got some trainings, and we really worked together as a team and shared ideas and sort of figured out something that worked, and then shared that among the grade levels, and that way everyone could use it and change it as they needed to meet their students' needs.
Well, top priority as a new principal was to find out what was in place, and my job really isn't to come in and change anything that's in place. It's to find out what's working well and find out what my role is to support it. MPL was one of the things that many teachers expressed that I had to get on board very quickly about, and the teachers, I could just sense right away that they were passionate about making sure that it continued on.
When parents come in for back to school night, when parents call on the phone and they say, well, what does this look like? We kind of have a general response, if you will, to answer that question.
We as a group are able to do something that not too many other schools are doing, that we are one of the pilot groups, that there's going to be a lot of learning, and there aren't a lot of examples that we can drive down to another school close by and see something up and running. And the big push that we have is the focus on the benefits.
So I voiced my opinion, I asked questions, and I learned a lot.
It's not always a matter of just simplifying it, but actually finding different ways to have that child access or show what they know and are able to do, and some of it's the language level. But I think we can do some professional development around that.
The team that we have here is a good team to make differences, and I think that in a few years we're all going to look back on this and go, we were so worried, and look how far we've come.
The communication between all of the staff members working with the students is key. having to make sure that materials are set for the students from the get-go, not, hey, we're doing this project, can you get these materials ready? The communication definitely had to be there. And as far as speech goes, depending on the areas the students are working on, let's just say it's speech sounds and talking, and maybe they're nonverbal, it's making sure that pictures are ready or their communication device is set, making sure that if it's a presentation, I would pull the kids out and practice that with them so that when they're talking to the class or presenting to the class, you know, they've had a little bit more practice with that. It definitely takes a lot of collaboration and communication. I always say teamwork makes the dream work.
And I found out that I was a lot stronger than I realized, and that the special education teachers relied on us just as much because we had the content and the background that they may not have been exposed to.
The teamwork that we came together to do, I think bonded our staff together. We had very similar concerns, we had very similar positives, and so it made us like really look at each other and say, you know, what are you doing for this, or what, you know, how do you solve this problem? Because we were all experiencing similar things, and I think it opened up a dialogue between the teachers, especially the teachers that were on the leadership team that when we were meeting monthly, or the co-teacher that we were working with. And then we were able to spread some of that to the teachers that weren't necessarily intimately involved with the project on a daily basis, and we were able to spread some of that. So I think it really, you know, that was a nice surprise that it did make our teamwork even stronger than it already was. And with the students, I've always tried in my classroom to build a team in the classroom. That's something that I always spend a lot of time with at the front end of the school year. Students really rallied around kids that they looked at as, and I don't mean in a negative way, they looked at them as different, but not different in a bad way, but needing different things. And the kids really rallied around them and supported them. And I've seen that with other students that I have not had in my own classroom, just seeing them in the halls or seeing them at recess or wherever. And that was, and I don't want to say it was surprising, but it was a nice result of that process. You just see them even step up further as kids and really just support everybody around them. And so I think it built teamwork with the adults and with the kids even stronger.
The rationale for the MPL project, but also the vision for the school.
Yes.
So is it that the whole, that we need to figure out some activities that Scott and Ryan can lead, perhaps, to kind of get across the vision for inclusive practices here at Barth?
I think, too, that people need to understand the concept that every child has the right to the general education curriculum, because I think that's not, people aren't real clear on that.
My students didn't look any different than anybody else in the classroom. And I would hope that anybody came in my room would see that they were participating. If I was doing a multiplication lesson, they had manipulatives and we're doing multiplication in a different way.
Those monthly leadership team meetings were important because they were just opportunities for us to come there and start to see what other people were doing. We had our own struggles, and everyone, I think, had a type of relationship with each other that they could trust each other, and they were able to be honest about what their problems were, and they were able to speak from a first-hand perspective about, here's what I do, come see it, it's 2 doors away, walk in, I'll come down and help you with this, here's what you need to do. And I think having that more of a sustainable capacity where we develop the expertise from within and expand it, I think that's where we ended up getting the good dialogue and the growth from, because it was something that was tangible for our teachers, and it was close, and it was right there.
Sometimes you feel like you're making a lot of progress, and then maybe teachers change or leadership changes, and so you have to really kind of take a step back, maybe sometimes a little bit more, and figure out again where their needs are. And sometimes that means starting over with some teams on that philosophical belief system. So that's a challenge, because as providing technical support, you just want to keep moving forward, but knowing that sometimes to facilitate change, you might need to go and take a step backwards to.
So we don't have a cookie cutter student here at Barth, and I love that we don't have that. But this student may need this accommodation, and this student may need that. And I think through the planning that we learned through this process, with the end in mind, what's the main thing we want the students to know, and then working backwards to see where we can make it meaningful for them. I think that was a great process for us, because it didn't only help the complex needs student, it really helps everybody in the classroom.
We've definitely been able to look at each child individually to see what is where they're currently at and what would help them be successful in the setting that we're looking, the inclusive setting that we're looking at. We've had an individual from the IU that's helped us with that, so she's done some of the SAS trainings and things like that for individual students to try to talk about what their needs are and where they'd be successful. We've met as core teams, third grade level team. We have a new student being included in there. As a team, what can we do? So we met on the team level.
Until we went through the process, I didn't even think about being in science class and getting their IEP goals addressed. It was, oh yeah, we are doing some math. Oh, we are doing vocabulary. Oh, I can pull out these sight words and they can read those few words out of this paragraph. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was always pulling out and working on skills separate from the content, and now I'm finding places that I can do it all together at one time.
Right, and I think that was a natural reaction for both of us, because we saw, before we saw the student as a person, we saw the IEP, and you saw the needs, and you went, oh, what do I do? This is 5th grade. They're at this level that's so much different than what we had. So it was like you were trying to find the way to bridge that gap in reverse, but with the process, we looked and went, oh, well, that was silly. We didn't realize we could have done this while we were in science class. Like, it's just, because I think it's that apprehension and that anxiety of an experience that we hadn't had yet. And so the coaching session made us, kind of open your eyes and went, oh, you could have been doing this.
I think one of the things that worked well for us was that we didn't talk about this in the abstract. We would talk about students on a case-by-case situation, and when teachers were honestly speaking about their struggles and what were their barriers, we're able to sit down and as a team work through overcoming those barriers. And I think that helped it gain momentum. And each grade level was given half a day to be able to sit down, talk through their needs, and not talk about it in the abstract. Talk about, here's a kid, here's my problem. And the consultants from the IU were able to really demonstrate their level of expertise by moving those teachers forward with what they were able to do with their kids. And it just, on that closer, more intimate level, was really where you're going to get the most impact, where someone is going to be able to evaluate, what do you need to move forward?
I think that as a team grows and we want to build sustainability, I think we need to really help the team think through, okay, this is our core team. How does this core team spread this information to the rest of the building so that it becomes systemic, that this belief system it permeates throughout the entire school? And how they, because our ultimate goal is to kind of step back and let the school take over in the facilitation process, in the building of skills, but actually plan out what that's going to look like as they grow. So it's really important at the end of the year to reflect on where you are and where you need to go for next year to build this sustainability that throughout the school.
There's no I in team, and not only one person can do it. You need the support of the staff. You need the support of your fellow teachers. You even need the support of the physical therapist, the speech pathologist, your guidance counselor. And it's surprising to say, but the students are a big part of it too, because they really work well together to make this a great experience.
Without dedicated planning time, it's a struggle to figure out the active participation, the engagement, and some of the communication pieces that are necessary for kids to work with their peers and actively engage in the activities that are going on in the classroom. So sometimes that means we have to restructure resources. And what Barth did was they took a strong look at this and decided in year 2 that The way they were going to allocate their resources was to have special educators assigned to grade levels instead of disability caseloads. That effort allowed teams to be able to better collaborate because they had common planning time.
We tried to make sure that all of the related arts classes happened at the same time for that grade level, which created common planning time that had to happen. If I just left it wide open for everyone, people wouldn't find time to meet. So I had to intentionally build that into the schedule so that they had that time, and it had to be systematic, and they spent time working together, because there's important conversations that need to happen back and forth between those two teachers.
Trust in each other, share with each other. There are 1,000 ideas to go around. If you're not sharing, it's going to be very difficult to get to that end point, because the whole team, and you hear it all the time, needs to be on the same page.
And we had to really work hard to get parents on board with that. So we would bring parents in and talk to them about the benefits that your child is not going to be in a self-contained classroom. They're going to be in a regular classroom with some supports, and our goal is to try to support your child inside of that classroom. And some parents are not comforted by that. They want their child in a classroom of 7 or 8 kids doing lower level work, and we had to really push the limits.
I think there's a sense of belonging that comes with it, and it's, you know, as a parent of a child with disabilities, sometimes you can feel like you're kind of left out. You know, conversations that you have with, you know, regular parents don't always tread along the same lines, because you deal with a lot of different issues that, you know, most kids don't have to face in their daily lives, and that can be particularly hard at times. And so sometimes that feeling of being in that group, being included in that class, you know, not just for the child, but I think for the parents as well, because I think you feel a little bit more a part of the regular school day. And it's not that, and it's not to slight or whatever, being in a skills class or being in a separate class, it's not to say that's a bad thing, but, you know, you feel in a different part of the world, so to speak. And sometimes this can have a normalizing effect in a way.
So Nathan, if you lose your house because of a fire, what's going to happen? You need to move and find a new house.
My student I've seen grow in many ways, just knowing him a little bit from last year and seeing him this year. In the last month or so, even just participating, we were talking about a science lesson, and he raised his hand and he volunteered an answer, and he was correct. And in that moment of the lesson, we didn't do any modifications for him. We didn't prompt him or give him, okay, here's a choice A, choice B, what do you think? He just was participating on his own. And I think that being part of this MPL process, he's gained leaps and bounds for if we just were what we were doing 2 years ago.
Is inclusion the right thing to do? Absolutely, 100%. Living proof right here. This little boy started doing kid writing in January. That's what he wrote, and that's what he drew. We do kid writing 2 days in every cycle. And this is what the little boy did today. Does it work? Absolutely, 100%. He's got good role models. He's got good communication skills now. He knows what he's supposed to be doing in school. He knows that he's there to learn. And his parents are a big asset to what he's doing. Inclusion, absolutely.
Some of the changes that I've seen over the past 3 years has been more acceptance. Students don't look at other students with complex needs as a student with a disability. They see a person, and they see a peer. I have not, you know, with my own children, they sometimes come home and will say, oh, so-and-so did this. And I'll say, oh, is that student in your homeroom or in your math class? Oh, no, that's a special ed student, where Here at Barth, it's a person, it's a student, it's not a special ed student, it's not a student who's autistic. And I think that from the past few years, we've come a long way with that. They're very accepting of all needs. They don't see the disability, they see the face.
It's amazing to see, as far as the learning aspect goes, our students, all students, have different areas of expertise or areas that they're really interested in. And especially those science and social studies areas, we found that once we really started pushing into the classroom and being fully included and everyone's in there, no matter what level you were at or these students were at, some kids knew more than other kids, and they were our students with complex support needs, and they're raising their hand and they're answering questions. Like, did they just say that? Like, really? They're listening and they're learning, and there's definitely challenges along the way, adapting materials and making sure that areas are at their skill level, but the learning aspect of it's just nice to be able to see, wow, these kids can do this. And that's something, like, once you see it and once you experience, you truly realize, wow, this is working.
I think the most exciting moment of this process was seeing the student move to the next grade level and the retention that they have of the material that I taught them, and that they could go in there and say, yes, I can do this. My one student in 4th grade now is doing rocket math, and we started that in 3rd grade and never thought he'd be able to do it. And for him to come back the first day of school and show me he did a rocket math test was the aha moment that I can do this.
I just want to reassure folks that they will have IU and patent support. We collaborate together, and it's ongoing. It's not a once and done. We provide this stand and deliver training and then we leave, but we're there with you, alongside with you, collaborating with you, facilitating conversations, providing technical assistance with the needs that your particular team needs.
A lot of teachers have to remember it's okay to say, I don't know and I need help. I was one of those teachers. I hadn't taught what we used to call life skills in the past, and now I have one student in my classroom who I didn't feel that I was prepared to teach, but if you say I need help, there's help for you.
Our kids were always included, but the fact that our students with complex support needs are being recognized across the district for doing things, and parents are writing us letters, and we're seeing students that haven't spoken are now carrying full conversations with peers. Just give it a chance. It's not going to come in a day, it's not going to come in a year, but give it a chance.
I think the greatest achievement of the project as a whole is that nobody sees any of the students as one teacher's students. They're everybody's students.
Reflecting back, people now can say, yes, it was worth it, and yes, we can do it.